Hi, everyone. I'm Ankush, founder of Eventable.com. Welcome to another episode of Building Awesome Events. Today, I have with me my very good friend, Richard John. Richard is the Chief Operating Officer at Realize, a company which describes itself as the oil in the engine of events. Richard is an events veteran with 30 good years behind him, and he describes his role currently as Corporate Jester. Today, Richard is going to take us through his new ebook titled A Dent in the Sofa, which appropriately enough is going to discuss lessons that event organizers can learn from binge-watching TV through a global pandemic. Welcome, Richard. So nice to have you here. And I can see that, you've really been putting in the time, binge-watching a lot of stuff, before you had this epiphany that you then decided to document into the ebook. So, before we come to that, just generally tell us a little bit more about what it is that, Realize does, what it is that you've been doing, and then we can get into the specifics of your ebook and the top takeaways for event profs.
Of course. Well, firstly, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here and following in such illustrious footsteps. And you're right. We call Realize a company that is the oil in the engine of events because it is so difficult to describe what we do. The company was set up with my business partner, David Preston, about 4 years ago. And originally, we were doing the apprenticeship program for new event professionals in the UK. And when the pandemic hit, we cliche alert, we pivoted to providing effectively online services for a whole host of companies, working with some very big providers and effectively building online events and then helping with the content capture and then actually running the events on the day. So, of course, it was quite difficult for someone who used to be so happy to go off to different events and be traveling around the world to be sitting at my desk. And I'm based in France. I hadn't spent very much time in the house here. And suddenly I was confronted with spending a lot of time here. We, like the rest of the world, we weren't allowed to go out. So that was a bit of a culture shock for me.
Yeah. So, thanks for sharing that, Richard. And, I'm assuming that through the whole pandemic period, you spent a lot of time watching TV, binge watching shows. How did you really make the correlation between, Netflix, and coming up with all of these ideas for your ebook?
Well, it's a very good question. I realized there was a lot of content that other people have been talking about, and I hadn't seen. So a good example, Game of Thrones. Everyone was talking about Game of Thrones. It was one of those things I wanted to watch it. It was one of those I'll get round to it moments. And then when the pandemic started and I was down here by myself, what I realized was that I would be quite tired at the end of the day. And what I do is I close my computer and I would go for a walk, but then what I do is settle myself down in front of the television. And there was a report that came up, I think it was on the BBC, that said that during the pandemic, people were watching TV for up to 6 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
And suddenly I thought, well, hang on, there's this big disconnect because on the one hand, we're saying we're fed up of running team meetings and being on Zoom all the time and we're exhausted by it. And at the same time, we're going and sitting down, we close one screen and going down and sit in front of another. So there's a disconnect there. And that's when I started to think about it. And there I was sitting on my sofa, hence the title of the ebook. And I kind of stepped back and thought, well, what am I actually doing? And there are probably lessons that we can learn because at the moment we're all having to pivot to online events. And we're all struggling with the same problems of, well, how do you get to your audience to actually choose your events? And that's where I started thinking about it and thinking, you know what, the Hollywood and Bollywood are effectively some of the biggest industries in the world. They've got the best brains. So I'm going to sit and watch and I'm going to try and steal from their brains and have a look and see what they're doing.
Well, I don't know how much you would really want to steal from, Bollywood's brains. Sometimes, all that content just seems so mindless. But, I'm excited to see what it is that you've learned effectively. And, we can get into it. I mean, do you have something to share with us? Would you like to put up a couple of slides?
By all means. Now, so here we are. And it's interesting. Yeah. The first thing is when we do events, the first thing we have to do is we say share content. And then you can imagine around the world, all the speakers are busy panicking, thinking, oh, please let this work.
Yeah.
But hopefully, if I press this button, we have a slide, which is just the logo of Realize. And let me jump in here and say, so here we have it. This is the logo we created for Dent in the Super.
Hey, that's cool. Yeah, I can see that. The little dent is really cute here.
And we decided, and I think in a way, here's one of the lessons. We wanted to make this fun. So although the subtitle is Lessons for Organisers from Binge-Watching TV Through a Pandemic. And one of the things you have to realize is that if you are, for example, a Netflix or an Amazon or a Disney, then your audience sits in front of the TV and they start flicking. And they're flicking, and they're flicking. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I have sat down at 7 o'clock in the evening and started looking at trailers. Yeah. And at 10 o'clock at night thought, well, okay, I've bookmarked lots of programs, but I haven't watched any of them.
Absolutely.
So one of the things we have to think about is how do you get people to choose your content over someone else's? Right. And sometimes having a great title is part of it. Just getting people to stop. Your audience has the attention span of a hiccup nowadays. So, if you don't capture them in the first few seconds, they are going to move on to something else. And throughout Dent in the Sofa, the ebook, there are 21 lessons, and some of them do refer to the fact that you've really got to capture your viewers' attention because they are incredibly unfaithful.
I think that's very, very sound, Richard. And, some of what you're talking are absolute, marketing fundamentals in itself. Having a great title, playing to the attention span, which just doesn't exist these days because, everybody is in some screen or the other, and there's really a war waging for people's attention. Right. So I think that's all very apt. Let's just continue. I'm very excited to see.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And you're right. And I think a lot of the time is you do have to come up with something kind of a bit witty. I found this beautiful example. Someone wrote a book called How to Hold Up a Bank. And you'd pick that up in a bookshop. And then the subtitle was The Art and Science of Avoiding Soil Erosion. And you think, okay, that's very clever. But we've got to be a bit clever now because something short to grab someone's attention and make them go, what? And then you've got to keep them. Yeah. And one of the things is in the past, you often used to have this expression, the Americans talk about the water cooler moment, which was when people come into work and go have yourself a glass of water and you talk about something. You talk about a program that might suddenly have caught your attention and people will say, did you see this? Yeah. And you have to think that when we create events, how often do we really create a water cooler moment? Or how often is it just the same kind of thing and it's all a bit dull? Right. And I think one of the important lessons also is that we've had to move to doing events that are physical and moving them online. And the technology is amazing, but a lot of the times people think, how do we recreate our event online? Yeah. And my response is, don't try and recreate your event online, create something new. And I think this is hugely important. Just because you can do everything online doesn't mean you should.
Exactly.
As you rightly say, people have got short attention spans nowadays. So we have to be a bit clever. Yeah. But here's another lesson might surprise people. If I was to ask, the program that was most popular throughout the pandemic, you might be people would say, Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad or whatever. The program that was streamed more than any other, believe it or not, was the American version of The Office, which is a series created in the UK. Yeah. And that's finished 8 years ago. They broadcast the last episode 8 years ago. And it's been the most popular program during the pandemic. So you have to ask yourself, why? And I think there's a degree of, we like the familiar. We recognize some of the characters. We've probably seen some of the episodes. Maybe we didn't see them. So now there's a chance to sit down and watch I think it was 212 episodes from beginning to end. So you think, there's a lesson here. When you're putting on an event, people still want the comfort of the familiar, a favorite speaker, a favorite presentation. So don't always think, oh my God, I've got to do something new, because there is a great deal of passion and enthusiasm for the familiar. Right. What you do is once you've captured people, then you can start bringing in some new content. So
I like what you just did there. And I was thinking about it, and what you're saying is so bang on, right? I mean, some people would go back and watch reruns of Seinfeld or Friends, and it's just comforting. It's a comfort watch, right? And then just with the Squid Game, I just like what you just put up there.
Absolutely, and I think this is it. It's once you've got people comfortable.
Yeah.
It's almost a case of they trust you, and then they can say, now we're going to show you something that's a bit new and a bit different.
Right.
One of the really interesting things I'd also mention about Squid Games, and it's a lesson that we could think about, is a lot of people started watching it, and it's from Korea. So they start watching it, it's got subtitles. Now, if you go into Netflix, you can change the settings, and suddenly it's dubbed with English voices. Or French voices or whatever. And the interesting thing is a huge number of people switched to dubbing and then thought, I don't like this. Yeah. And they've switched back to watching it with subtitles.
Right.
And a number of useful lessons here. The first thing is we know that when you move to putting your events online, then suddenly your audience is global. People can watch your content from anywhere. And it's worth investing in putting subtitles on for people for whom English isn't their first language. They may speak English, but they're not that familiar. So there's comfort in subtitles.
Yeah.
So I live in France. I'm trying to learn French, so I will watch programs with French subtitles. They hurt. It helps. It's painful, but it does help. But I think it's also about this acceptance that people are happy to watch subtitles. Surprisingly, younger people are more open to subtitles than older people.
Right.
So, valuable lesson. People are making Squid Games one of the most popular, most watched programs in the world in Korean, a language very few of us speak. So some interesting lessons here about widening your reach and learning from what the TV companies are doing.
And that's brilliant, Richard, because, I can't remember the last time I saw content from an event that had subtitles on it. Right. And, it just makes so much sense, especially if you're going to be putting on a virtual event. You want to do everything possible to really, further your reach as much as possible.
Absolutely. And if you look at the global success of TED, where you can go to their website and you'll find that there are subtitles and transcripts. Yeah. And a lot of those have actually been done not by the organizer themselves, but by people who just want to share that knowledge.
Right.
And and there are options. There are options now for generating subtitles that aren't particularly expensive. And when you think about the audience you can reach for virtually nothing, it's worth exploiting it.
Absolutely.
Jumping ahead here, I think there's lesson 4 there. So lesson 6, if this works, oh, yes. So one of my favorite programs, Game of Thrones. I watched every episode of this. Yeah. And the interesting thing is the character, Daenerys, who rides this dragon, whenever she introduces herself, there's this long speech from her or from one of her staff about who she is. She's queen of this and empress of that, and the mother of dragons.
Yeah.
And the thing is, she'll be presented this way, and you think, well, this was a very popular series. They had to keep filling, an hour each week, and you had to know who the characters were.
Yeah.
But my point is, she didn't need any of that. She's got a fire-breathing dragon. And one of the things I get people to think about is when we do events, when we have our speakers come on, especially when we're doing this online, how often do we perhaps have, someone will come in and say, I'd just like to introduce our panelists today. And then they'll tell you about the panelists and where they studied and where they worked and what papers have they've written. And you've got 6 of them doing this.
Yeah.
And your audience are at home thinking, I'm bored. And my suggestion to event organizers is when you're doing events, your content is live or pre-recorded. Get your speakers to unleash their dragons straight away. You get out there to walk on stage, even if it's on a screen, and say, did you know this? Did you know that the most watched program is The Office and that hasn't been on television for 7 years? Ask a question or say something that's going to get the audience thinking, really? Because otherwise, the audience is going to start thinking, okay, while they're introducing the panel, I'm just going to go over here and do my emails.
Right.
We know it's a huge issue doing online events, especially because you haven't got the ability to just keep an eye on your audience and making sure they're staying, or at least pretending to stay focused.
Yeah.
So they were a great chance to see Game of Thrones and fire-breathing dragons.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't take my eyes off that. I never thought I'd be looking at that looping over and over again.
Yeah. And as you can see, I'm just picking on a few of the lessons here. As I mentioned, the book does have 21, but here's something I think is very, very interesting. It's, when you think about the olden days, it was very common for us when we put on events to have people talking about, or have what they call a futurist. Someone would come onto the stage and tell us this is what the future is going to look like. And I don't think any of those futurists actually predicted COVID. But one of the things that many event organisers are facing now is they're under pressure from their bosses and their clients saying, well, tell us what the future looks like. Tell us what our strategy should be. Tell us which way we should go when it comes to events.
Right.
And the thing is, I can't tell you the answer, but I don't think anyone can. But what I wanted to do was just give you this as a lesson. During the pandemic, you've got two major Hollywood studios. You've got, in this case, I think this is Marvel, which is now Disney. And they'd spent a lot of money producing the latest version of Wonder Woman.
Right.
And they want to release that at the cinema because that's where you make the big bucks right at the start. But the pandemic dragged on and they made the decision, we're not going to release it at the cinema. Or in fact, they did show it at the cinema, but at exactly the same time, they streamed it on television.
Right.
Because no one was going to the cinema.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, you've got EOS Productions who made James Bond, the latest version of James Bond. They said, we are going to show this in the cinema.
Right.
And we're going to keep moving the show date and the preview date until we can show it at the cinema.
Right.
And they made that decision. Now, my point about this is both films were very, very successful. Both those companies made a decision, and you could argue that it was the right decision or the wrong decision. They're both justifying their decision. So what I'm saying is that no company should be going, the future is definitely online, or the future might be hybrid, or the future is this, that, and the other.
Right.
We don't know. All you can do is take a lesson out of James Bond and Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And test. Not sort of, as we say, nail your colours to just one mast, but just test. One of my favorite expressions is, there's no failure, there's only feedback. So it is about trying it, testing it, looking at the results and thinking, did that work the way we wanted it to work?
Yeah. And I think that's an apt point for, especially at this time of the year, Richard, you come across so many articles and so much content, which is filled with predictions. This is the future of events for next year. This is what is going to happen. But we don't know, right? We just don't know. Right. So all we can do is just go with the flow. And I think this habit of, testing, experimenting, learning from that, moving quickly is very, very important. I
couldn't agree more. And as I say, I will repeat my favorite expression. There's no failure. There's only feedback. Things may not work the way you wanted them to work, but you do have to try them. And it's interesting. I was at a live event recently, and I was sitting on this panel, and people were talking about, is the future hybrid? Right. And they got to me last, and by which point I was probably a bit bored. And I said, the thing is, because I'm old, people talk about digital marketing. Okay? There's no such thing as digital marketing. There's just marketing. Yeah. People will talk about alternative medicine. There isn't alternative medicine. There is just medicine. Right. And people will talk about hybrid events, and there aren't hybrid events. There are just events. And what happens is we have to design events that meets the needs of our customers and allow our customers to consume them the way they want to do. Yeah. And I think this is one of the key things. And we'll have to do that in different ways. And we can't always put on an event that meets the needs of all our customers. Right. And that is just how it is. But this idea of there is only one way, I think, is a bit crazy. Yeah, I agree. Here we are. Here's another lesson. I think that's probably Sylvester Stallone. It usually is. Some poor girl, she's probably falling out of a helicopter or something. Yeah. What's the point of this? Well, you probably know when we do this binge watching, there's a couple of things. One is, I don't know if you're anything like me. I was watching 6 or 7 different series at a time. Yeah. And one of the important things is, so if I'm watching Game of Thrones and then I'm watching Breaking Bad and then I'm watching, something else like Homeland, it can all get a bit confusing in my head. So at the start of every episode, there's a quick reminder and I go, oh yes, now I remember what's happening here. And I think how often when we do online events, do we have that kind of reminder? Right. Another lesson is how often when we do events, is there a story? Because when you watch Homeland or Game of Thrones or whatever else, there's a storyline that goes through it. And how often when we do events, do we just have one speaker after another who are individually very good, but there is a consistent story that we need to be making sure happens.
Right.
But ultimately, when we do online events and we say we're going to stop here for a coffee break or we're going to stop here for lunch, how many times do we actually stop with something like this happening? You know, ideally, what you do is you'd have this poor young lady dangling out of the helicopter. You know, his hand is weakening, his grip is loosening, and cut to commercial. No, wait, what? Wait. How often
Richard, this reminded me, I'm just sorry to stop you here, but since we started off talking about, what we can learn from Bollywood movies, Bollywood movies traditionally are very long format movies, right? They run into 2.5 hours, at least 3 hours sometimes. And they always, in the cinemas, they always had what they called an intermission or an interval.
Yes.
Right. So the interval would stop at a point exactly like the one which is on our screens right now, with Sylvester's trying to, maybe save somebody from falling off a helicopter, or just at, which makes you go, hey, wait, what just happened? I need to go quickly, grab my popcorn, come back and then finish the rest of this. Right. So I think it's very, very, it's a very apt point. Go ahead, Richard. Sorry.
Yeah, well, but it's precisely as you say. It is creating that kind of tension. And how often when we do events, does someone, we say we finish now, and then it'll just. And I've done a lot of online events. We just have something that comes up and says the presentation will continue in 15 minutes.
Right.
As opposed to someone coming on and saying we've had a really exciting morning, but let me tell you what's coming up this afternoon.
Right.
And we don't tend to do that. We don't learn these lessons. Sometimes maybe we think business is too serious for that. Or I think the truth is, organisers aren't telling the clients, you need to do this to make sure people come back. We have, thanks to the wonders of all the systems that we're using, we can see how, there's the decay rate that people are watching and then they're all drifting off at the end.
Absolutely.
Let's tackle it. Let's not just go, shame. Let's go and tackle it.
Right.
I'll jump on to, what's this? Lesson 15. Okay. Now, I don't know whether you've seen this. I hope this works all right. This is a real life example.
I believe you have a filter.
Oh, yeah. I remember this.
In the video settings. You might want to
we're trying to, can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it.
This was the craziest.
We're live. I'm not a cat.
Exactly.
I can see that. I think if you click the up arrow next to this.
So, I just love that. But the point is, life has been pretty bleak and pretty serious. The pandemic's been absolutely appalling. But throughout all that, as people have gone online, there have been episodes like that, like the jury, or in that case, the lawyer turning up looking like a cat.
Yeah.
Or, we've seen people doing interviews and suddenly their children are bursting in.
Right.
And one of the reason I show that is because I think it's very important that we celebrate those moments of, oh my God, what's happened here? And we don't. And just to give you an idea, I do mention this in the ebook. In the UK, there's a series, they normally show it around Christmas time. It's called, it'll be All Right on the Night. And effectively, it's someone famous coming on showing bloopers and mistakes from the movies. And it used to be that in the days when you could buy a DVD of a movie, you'd watch all the extras, and one of those would be, here are all the bloopers. And you'd watch these ridiculously overpaid actors, just making a mess of their lines or things going wrong. And the point is, we loved it.
Right.
The reason I mention this is, if we're making these online events, then it's very, very likely that we've captured, bloopers and cock-ups and people making mistakes and things falling over. There's nothing wrong with putting that in and saying, we've got 10 minutes of the making of, because you know what? People love it. And there's nothing wrong with having some laughter. And it's not malicious laughter, because the truth is we've all been there. All these,
Jackie Chan movies, I don't know if you've seen, which at the end you always had these outtakes or bloopers, as you call them, right? And it just leaves the audience, feeling all warm and saying that, he's human after all, as they're walking out of the theater.
Exactly. And we often talk about now that, good leadership is often, it's emotional leadership, it's honest leadership. It's our leaders who step forward and say, do you know what, I've made a mistake. And we want people to think, there's a big fear about speaking in public. And there's nothing wrong with saying, do you know what, something terrible could happen. You could dry up, or your technology could stop working, or, the lectern could fall over.
Right.
Do you know what? It doesn't matter, because it's happened to other people. It's just, it's the frailty of being human. And there is some, I think when you introduced me at the start and I talked about the importance of the role of a jester.
Yes.
I think laughter is very, very important, but it also serves other purposes. Traditionally in history, the jester was someone who could actually be very, very rude about the king or the queen without getting their head chopped off, or would find it was often very satirical.
Right.
And there's a wonderful quote, and I can't remember who said it. There was a lady, and she said, "When the mouth is open for laughter, it's possible to drop in a morsel of knowledge." And you want people to be entertained.
Yes.
Really. So if your events are entertaining people, they'll stay and watch more of this.
Right.
So why are we almost frightened about having humor and pathos and a bit of disaster in our presentations? Because again, it goes back to this point about being the art of storytelling.
Absolutely.
And I think, so as I mentioned, there are 21 lessons. What I'm going to do is just finish with this one, lesson 18, which may be something you may want to leap in and we'll talk about here.
Absolutely.
This idea of you've got a plane to catch, you get to the airport, quick, I must go and buy a book. You rush in, you don't know any of the authors, but what you do is you pick up a book that looks interesting, you turn over, look at those testimonials. Oh, well, the other people, they like this. I'm going to go and buy this book based on what other people have said. So it kind of de-risks the whole thing. So, one of the things we need to do all the time is constantly having testimonials on our website and sharing the fact that people say, this is good content.
Absolutely.
So what I'll do there is I'll say, so the book, if you go to the website, www.dentinthesofa.com, people can find all the details and they can get in contact with me should they wish to, but they can get the ebook and watch the video. And I would mention the video is about 20 minutes long. And at the end, I put all the bloopers and all the mistakes that I made at the end just to practice for each.
Hey, that's great. Okay, we are back. That is really entertaining, Richard. And I'm thinking maybe we should do another couple of episodes because that was so much fun. I'm sure people watching right now are going to go and download the ebook for sure. It all makes so much sense, Richard. And it's just as they say, it's just common sense. But it's so difficult sometimes when you're caught up in the hurly-burly of your jobs and your work to really connect all these dots. Right. And this is fantastic advice for any event marketer, at any time in their careers, whether you're just starting out, whether you think you have a lot of experience, it's still these are some fantastic little gems to just go and revisit. Right. Thank you so much, Richard, for sharing. And I love the last example, where you really speak about, rushing through the airport, finding a book. The only way you can decide if you want to buy the book is by looking at the testimonials, on the back cover, or essentially what is social proof, right? And really that social proof is, we think, can be one of the most powerful elements in an event marketer's arsenal, which is why, Richard, I founded Eventable.com some time back, which is an events review platform. Right. It's a very simple concept. It's a little like TripAdvisor or a G2.com in the software space. And the whole idea that we really wanted to pursue was to get attendees, speakers, and sponsors to provide us with reviews of their event experiences, right? Whether it's a virtual event, a hybrid event, or an in-person event really doesn't matter. And what we've seen, we've now collected thousands and thousands of reviews. We've seen that people really want to share. And these reviews are sometimes very, very opinionated, right? So even if somebody's sitting in front of a laptop screen and just, watching a virtual event, sometimes I'm just surprised at how opinionated the review is. And on the other side, our intention was to help event organizers capture social proof at scale and really 10x their event brands. right? Event organizers sometimes struggle with capturing social proof. We've made it easier. We've also turned that social proof into badges, right? That they can really put up on their landing pages. Because, at the end of the day, what you want to say is that it's not just me who's telling you, the attendee, that, I've put on the world's best show. It's our users, it's our community who's praising us, right? And this is what we have to show for it. Right. I'll quickly share my screen, and before we let our users, our viewers go, maybe we'll give them a glimpse of what we've been building so far. So that's our logo, Richard. We're the TripAdvisor for events. It's a cheesy line, but it's just meant to convey the point that we are a review platform for events, right? And the surprising part, Richard, is that we're really the first in the world to attempt something like this. Right. And one of the problems that we set out to solve, was how do attendees discover events today? Right. And it's a very unstructured, it's a very inefficient process. People, when you ask people around you, hey, do you have a list of the top 5, the top 10 events that you want to attend this year? Nobody really does. People are dependent on their social media feeds. They would see an ad sometimes pop up somewhere, or their friends or social circles, who might mention an event or two. But nobody really has a structured framework or a system of finding events, great events, I would say, which, consistently over a period of time. So we really wanted to help attendees, figure out, whatever industries they're interested in, these are the top events that you should be attending, right? And how we do that is very simple. We allow attendees, speakers, and sponsors to provide reviews of their event experiences. These reviews are then scored algorithmically and then help the events get ranked for their chosen categories, right? So for any category, for any market, or for any industry, at a simple glance, you can see the top 10 or the top 20 events, right? Which makes it very easy to say that let me just go try these top 3 out or the top 5 out, right? They might be a great fit for you. At the same time, we want to help, as I said, event organizers 10x their event brands by using the power of social proof, which is what we've been talking about. And as you can see here, Richard, event organizers can pick up these badges, put them on the landing pages, on their websites, and they signal to their prospective attendees, their prospective speakers and sponsors that, hey, it's not just us who are saying that, we put on a great show. It's our users, it's our viewers, it's our attendees, our speakers and sponsors who really voted us, as the best for networking, the best in our particular category, etc. And, this can be a very, very powerful thing, right? At the end of the day, at some time back, I was talking with Sir Martin Sorrell. I was interviewing Sir Martin Sorrell, the legendary Sir Martin Sorrell. And he described it very simply. He told me that, the way I see it is that a review is nothing but, what was word of mouth earlier is now an online review, right? And these days we're living in a review economy, right? We go through our days either consuming reviews or rating stuff on Amazon, on the food we buy, we would read reviews for. And therefore it makes total sense that your attendees would want to review you, rate you, rank you on a third-party neutral platform. And you can aggregate, all of what your attendees really feel about you and put it up on your landing pages, right? So all the love that is being showered on you, all the praise that you're getting, it's a very, very easy and simple way to say that this is what our attendees really think about us. And if you've really done the hard work and put on a great show, really you want to get that out. And you can do that very simply with our platform, Eventable.com. Right, you work with us to source the reviews from your attendees. You wait for the magic to happen. You will see the ratings badges for your event will get generated. You take them, you put them on your landing pages, right? And then you will see the difference that this kind of social proof makes to your marketing and branding efforts over a period of time. It's as simple as that, Richard. For anything else, I would request people watching right now just to go and have a look at the site, which is Eventable.com. If anybody really wants to, they can book a chat with me. I'm happy to spend more time explaining the concepts and doing a deep dive with you. And you can see a bunch of logos. I mean, this is a little bit of social proof of our own. We are really working with a bunch of event companies to source reviews, to get them their social proof at scale, and a number of other things, right? I mean, it is really a very detailed platform. It is a labor of love, and we would love to showcase it to all the event organizers who are watching this right now. I hope that that makes sense, Richard. I mean, do you have any particular thoughts about that?
Well, I think we're singing from the same hymn sheet because you're right. I mean, when I go to events, I so often will fill in a feedback sheet, and I think, but of course, it's going to go to the organizer,
right,
who will be very selective about the data they use.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, I think about whenever I want to go away for a weekend, I need to plan it 6 months in advance because my partner is going to be on TripAdvisor, reviewing every hotel and every restaurant, and deciding where. I mean, it's exhausting work. I'm glad she does it. And you're right. We are driven now by this idea of, well, what do other people think? And also, as you rightly say, people want to get their voice heard. And if I'm thinking about going to an event that I haven't been to before, it would be useful to have a source of information because obviously the organizers are going to promise you the world, but it would be good to hear from other people. So, and
I think quite simply, I think people trust other people, and you really want that. You really want to see what your peers are doing. If I'm a marketer, if I'm an HR professional, I want to see what folks like me, what kind of events they're attending. And Absolutely. This, and being an open system like that, this allows me to see exactly that. It allows me to see what events professionals like me are attending. How is that event performing? Therefore, should I go to it the next time around? All right. So it's a very simple equation, and at the same time, I think, Richard, you've made a lot of great points as well. The final thing I would really request for everybody watching is to go download Richard's ebook. I'm sure there's tremendous value that you will gain from that. Connect with both Richard and me on LinkedIn to continue the conversation. Take a look at our review platform, Eventable.com. And thanks a lot for watching today. And we can't wait to come back with with another episode of Building Awesome Events. Right. So thanks a lot, Richard. Thanks a lot for your time. And I really hope that we can do another one of these soon.
Fingers crossed. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.